Hello and welcome to SCHALE Raid Tactics, a series of videos where I will lay out details for bosses in the Total Assault mode of Blue Archive and offer general guidance and strategies. This video will cover Insane Shirokuro. If you prefer reading text, I have document guides written by myself linked in the description of this video. Otherwise, I'm Kozu and thank you for coming. The Insane difficulty is the latest level of difficulty players can attempt in the Total Assault game mode. On top of everything you already know about a boss in Extreme and below, Insane introduces new mechanics unique to this difficulty. These new mechanics will build upon and sometimes have you reconsider the strategies and team comps you may have previously used for Extreme. Before we start, this video assumes you're already familiar with the raid on Extreme and below. To keep this video succinct, I will only discuss the differences introduced in Insane. There are two very notable passive changes. Firstly, both Shiro and Kuro apply a permanent uncleansable 80% healing recovery debuff on all of your students. This basically removes your ability to brute force the raid boss through healing, and instead makes you place much more emphasis on actually dodging incoming attacks. The second, more important change is Shiro and Kuro now deal penetrating, aka yellow, type damage, effectively removing from play all yellow armored tanks and making all yellow armored DPS extremely difficult to use. Blue armored students won't get one shot, but will die sooner rather than later due to the healing debuff. Thus, it's recommended to prioritize red armored students as they have the best chances of survival. As far as the boss's attacks go, they generally increase the punishment for ignoring boss mechanics, but also added some incentive and reward for playing correctly. Shiro now throws two types of bombs, white bombs and blue bombs. The white bombs don't do anything special, they are the same bombs you have faced in lower difficulties. The blue bombs will apply an 80% movement speed debuff for 40 seconds. You really don't want to be hit by this. You can't heal it off because of the healing debuff, and it is incredibly difficult to dodge any subsequent bombs when your students are slowed. Shiro's bowling ball has also changed. They now roll balls down two lanes, and these balls will deal an additional 600,000 true damage if the target is inflicted with a movement speed debuff. From our perspective, the safe spot for the ball is always on the right of Shiro. If you successfully block the ball with cover, the ball will bounce back and increase the groggy gauge just like lower difficulties. In addition, Shiro will take 50% increased damage for 40 seconds. If your cover is strong enough, you can block both balls at the same time, and the groggy bar will increase twice as fast, but you won't gain any extra debuff stacks from this. It's super important to return the ball because on top of ensuring your survival, it is also a direct boost to your DPS. Kuro has gone through a bit more change than Shiro has. Insane Kuro has gained a new skill. She applies a mark, dealing damage and inflicting an 80% movement speed debuff for 40 seconds to the nearest target. Unfortunately, this is unavoidable, but it is cleansable. The carousels have gone through adjustments as well. There are new attack patterns with the same idea of 6 sequential patterns and 3 infinitely looping ones. On top of that, the carousels will deal an additional 600,000 true damage if the target is inflicted with a movement speed debuff. Dealing with this is the same as lower difficulties. You have to get out of the way. Also, if you manage to make Kuro hit herself, you will be rewarded with a 50% damage taken debuff applied to the boss for 40 seconds. If Kuro is inflicted with a movement speed debuff, the carousels can also hit her for 600,000 true damage. That summarizes all the additional mechanics Insane introduces to Shirokuro. In order to properly deal with these mechanics, there is a general team structure you want to follow. One thing to keep in mind as you watch is that over time, the best units you can bring to a fight may change over the course of the game's life. But general team building principles don't really change. Thus, I recommend you pay attention to the roles you have to fill out on the team rather than the units themselves. With that said, in order to handle phase 1 of the fight, I will recommend to have on your team at the minimum 2 of your strongest blue DPS, a support who can reposition other units, and cover. The DPS you generally want to prioritize are strong single target damage dealers with red armor. DPS units who can self-reposition are especially valuable. There are also some good DPS for yellow armor, but be warned that these units are very difficult to keep alive and you will have to babysit them throughout the entire fight while being on point with your repositioning. For repositioning units, there are quite a handful of them. You generally want to prioritize units with lower X costs because they let you play more reactively compared to expensive units that will almost force you to bank the cost. Some repositioning units also fill multiple roles at the same time. You want to look out for these as well. Finally, there are currently 2 units who can provide cover, Shizuko and Shimiko. Of the 2, you would want to bring Shizuko because she's cheaper to make effective, and also provides bonus utility that will be slightly more helpful than Shimiko. For cover to be effective, you want the cover to have at the minimum 15k HP. To check exactly what you need to achieve this, I recommend going to the site SCHALE and select the cover providing student. Go to the options and fiddle with the parameters until the cover has 15k HP. This way, you will know exactly how much to invest in the unit to let you block 1 bowling ball. To block 2 balls, the cover needs 30k HP. If you're using Shizuko, the actual HP requirement is slightly lower because of her attack down debuff. But it's not a bad idea to push to 15 or 30k anyway, just in case. Some combination of these units will probably fill up 4 slots of your team. The remaining 2 can be whatever support or filler DPS you see fit. You really want to make the team take it on phase 1 to be the strongest you can, so that you can kill Shiro in one go. This is because additional teams are unlikely to continue surviving Shiro's bombs and balls. You don't want to sacrifice any remaining blue DPS because you need them for Kuro, and weaker DPS are unlikely to affect Shiro. Try to bring Shiro down to below 1 million HP. If you can't do that, you're probably not ready for Insane. Team building for Kuro is much more simple. You simply throw the rest of your student roster at her until she is dead. There is no strict team structure to follow, but there are some considerations to make body throwing easier. Your selection of DPS and repositions in phase 2 are the same as phase 1, but it's not a bad idea to also bring cover or summons, at least 1 damage buffing support, and optionally 1 movement speed debuff. The students with summons exist solely to add extra survivability for your team by blocking carousels. The cheaper you can make this happen, the better. Damage buffing supports are desirable here as they are in any raid. The reason you field them in Kuro instead of Shiro is because you likely didn't have space on the team to use them for Shiro. Since the requirements are softer in Kuro, it's easier to go all out on buffing your DPS. Finally, the movement speed debuff will help you deal extra damage to Kuro by using the carousels against her. More details will be on this later. That's it for the team building. The remainder of the video will cover in-game strategies you can use on the boss for an easier time. Double bounce. As mentioned previously, it is possible to bounce both incoming balls at the same time. Simply make sure your cover has 30k HP before dropping it in the middle of 2 lanes. If for some reason you cannot afford to make your cover 30k HP, there is a funny trick where you can pre-summon your cover to block the first ball, and then as the second ball rolls down the next lane, you can re-summon it to block the other ball. The problem with this strategy is it costs extra skill points since you're doing double the amount of summons. If you can afford that, good for you, but it might be risky if you are tight on DPS. Why are you hitting yourself? This was already mentioned earlier in the video, but you can make Kuro hit herself for 600,000 true damage. There is no complicated timing to this, simply drop the movement speed debuff on Kuro when you see a carousel lined up to hit her. If you want to maximize this strategy, you should make an effort to memorize the order the attack patterns appear so you can be in the right position at the correct time. Of the 9 patterns, Kuro only hits herself in 4 of them. It is also important that you move all your units out of the way since the carousel will stop if they hit your students instead. If it is difficult to constantly have to reposition your team out of the way, consider running a team dedicated to making Kuro hit herself so you can maximize this damage. Over the course of the full 4-minute fight, you can make Kuro hit herself 5 or 6 times for a total of 3 million to 3.6 million damage. Safe spots. There are a number of spots that are safe from any of Kuro's carousels. Some students can move themselves into these spots, otherwise you'll have to use repositioning abilities. These safe spots are very precise, so getting it right will take some practice. Although once you're there, you don't need to worry about the safety of these students for the remainder of the fight. There is also a pseudo safe spot accessible by any unit with exactly 650 range in position 4. This puts that unit in a spot which will naturally avoid almost every single carousel without assistance. There is only 1 pattern out of the 9 that will hit this unit. If you manage to block this carousel, either by sacrificing another unit in position 1 or by using a summon, this unit should be safe for the rest of the fight. That's it for the Shirokuro Insane guide. In my opinion, Insane changed Shirokuro for the better. There's a lot more depth to it now and the mechanics actually matter. No longer can you brute force the boss with a combination of restarts and spam healing. There are some people who still dislike Shiro due to the bomb randomness, but don't worry about them. They're crazy people who want to brute force Shiro to chase a higher score. They're basically playing a different game to the one you are. Good luck and have fun.